Honeybees are at a crossroads. That means we are too. Honeybees are dying at an unprecedented rate due to a number of factors. Increased insecticide use is having side effects on bee populations. Parasites like the varroa mite are ravaging colonies, and perhaps the most troubling thing is that colonies of bees are outright disappearing in a phenomenon known as colony collapse disorder. This global loss in bees not only decreases environmental health, but also damages human agricultural endeavors, as we rely very heavily on the pollination services provided by bees. I was able to go into the field and get a closer look at a few colonies of honeybees being raised locally. I was also able to learn quite a few things from PhD candidate Liz Walsh.
So we've got what are called nucleus colonies here. So from your basic biology, do you remember what a nucleus is?
I mean,
The
yeah.
essential small part of a cell that has all of the DNA and all the very, very vital information in it, but it's the tiny part. And so this is a colony that has a queen in it. She's good to go, but it's a mini one. And so they're called nuke colonies. These are 8-frame colonies. They're full-size ones. Why don't you guys come on up?
Bless you.
So here's some workers. If you're interested in differences in workers and queens, you can get some close-ups to the workers right now, and that shows up really well against that plywood. Yeah, so this is...
I specifically wanted to find out more about the varroa mites and how they affected the happenings of an ordinary bee colony. Varroa mites parasitize bees by draining their blood, significantly harming the bee in the process. As it turns out, varroa mites are specifically attracted to the life cycles of drones in the colony, and mites are found 2 to 30 times more often in drone brood than in worker brood. Unchecked infestations can have devastating effects on a colony. I got to interview Liz to find out even more about these topics.
Hi, I'm here with Liz Walsh, a PhD candidate studying honeybees. And I just wanted to ask you a few questions about specifically pest species and how they kind of interrupt the rhythms of a colony and what they can do to interfere and even destroy colonies. So how might a species like the varroa mite really impact the colony, and how do they mess with it so much?
Yeah, so the way I explain varroa mites to people on the street is I say, okay, think about human lice. Now imagine that they're the size of a 12-inch paper plate.
Wow.
And now imagine that they vector over 12 different viruses that could kill you. And then, to this kind of horrific image, also imagine that they're in every single house in the US. That's how varroa mites are.
That's a pretty terrifying image.
It is, isn't it? So you can understand why varroa mites are the #1 honeybee pest in the US and in many places globally as well. As of now, with Australia being relatively recently invaded by varroa mites, there's no continent or country on Earth that is varroa mite free where bees are still kept.
Wow.
Because Antarctica is probably varroa mite free. Yeah.
Awesome. So what are some of the signs and symptoms of colony collapse syndrome, and what can entomologists do to kind of prevent that, or what steps are being taken to make it less likely?
So colony collapse is something really, really interesting. It's sort of the name we're using for a phenomena that we really don't understand. So in 2006, predominantly, and some in 2007, honeybees in the US were plagued with what we came to call CCD, or colony collapse disorder. And so this was characterized by beekeepers opening previously healthy and populous colonies and seeing very, very low numbers of adult honeybees with a fully functional queen. and an absence of many of the other pests that descend on colonies when they grow very weak. So things like wax moths or yellow jackets, kind of ants, the vultures of the honeybee world. When a colony grows weak, they normally sweep in and kind of give it the death knell. With CCD, that didn't really happen, and so there were all these bees that just disappeared. Where did they go? There weren't piles of dead bees outside of a colony like you would expect to find if pesticides were suddenly sprayed into a colony or anything like that. And so CCD really took its toll on bees in the US, and nobody really knows why. Colonies that displayed CCD had relatively high levels of fungicides in the pollen, but not abnormally high levels of fungicides. They also had relatively high loads of nosema, a microsporidian gut parasite of honeybees, but again, not abnormally high levels. So it's really this mystery, and this mystery is compounded by the knowledge that on the Isle of Wight in the UK, honeybees suffered something with the same exact symptoms as CCD around the turn of the century.
Interesting.
And that is
very interesting.
1900, not 2000.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's something that's very interesting. And there's been bee blights in the past, as early as 900 AD. But those particular reports were characterized by a great bee mortality. And and what else did they say? Larval disease. I mean, the larvae that appeared in CCD colonies were drying up because they didn't have enough adult workers to take care of them, but the ones that were cared for looked fine. So hard to say if those were very early instances of CCD or not. But the Isle of Wight disease
could that
seems
possibly be tied to like environmental changes as far as like temperature and climate? Because around the turn of the 19th century, when the Industrial Revolution was kind of getting going in the UK.
Hard to say. It would be very, very interesting to know if those even earlier reports around the 1900 were, what exactly were those? So really a lot of questions that have not been answered. We haven't found elevated levels of carbon or anything like that in colonies, which would be what I would suspect if it was an industrial revolution sort of thing. Although I'm not sure if that's been widely looked for. So you really don't know, and that's really an insightful question.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the information.
My pleasure.
Thanks. And